Good morning, everyone. Happy Children's Day from last Monday. It's always nice when things get extended. My wife's always very happy because I'm not very good at marking birthdays and things. So quite often cards and gifts start arriving for about several days afterwards. It becomes an extended birthday celebration. And so this is a bit like this as well. So, yes, Children's Day. So in order to celebrate Children's Day, what does one need? And in order to have children, what do you need? Parents. That's right. So most people, not everybody of course, and most people, they want to become parents. And then when you become a parent, the day in which you become a parent, your whole life is transformed and changed. From the day before you have children to the day after you have children, you become a different person. And suddenly you feel, no, I'm no longer just a husband or wife. Now I'm a parent, now I'm a father, or now I'm a mother. And for most people, it's an incredibly joyful day. I remember when my son Robert, when they had their first child, they were both so incredibly happy. He was just beaming from ear to ear. And then, after a couple of days, he was still so happy because he said, I got a perfect baby. Just sleeps through the night. Anyway, so I went away for a few weeks. I was abroad teaching. And when I came back, he had all these dark rings under his eyes, and he was half asleep during the day. And he said, yeah, she keeps waking up during the night. I said, yeah, that's what it is to be a parent. And it's not all joy and happiness. Sometimes you have to realize, okay, my baby's crying. What am I going to do? I'm going to let my baby cry through the night, or I'm going to get up, even though I don't want to, and feed my baby. And so, who wants to get woken up at 3 or 4 in the morning and go and feed their baby? Nobody. But we do it. Why do we do it? Because we love our child. Now, that doesn't mean that we feel all nice and warm and gooey and happy when they wake us up, but we do it anyway. So it's not liking it, it's that's love. You're doing it because you love your child, irrespective of the fact that you don't really feel like getting up at 3 or 4 in the morning to feed. And that's just the way it is. And so my grandmother always used to say, little children, little problems, big children, big problems. And that's the way it goes. And so who were the first children in the world then? Yeah, according to the Bible story, there was Adam and Eve. But Adam and Eve, they came from somewhere, so obviously they had parents. But the first children that were recorded are the children of Adam and Eve, which were Cain and Abel. And how did they turn out? Not so well. So just read this little story. I'm sure you're very familiar with it. As Adam made love to his wife Eve, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. And she said, with the help of the Lord, I brought forth a man. And later she gave birth to his brother Abel. Now Abel kept flocks, and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruit of the soil as an offering to the Lord, but Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. And the Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. Then the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at the door. Its desires for you to have you, but you must rule over it. Now Cain said to his brother, let's go out to the field. And while they're in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. So you can see there, you can imagine, well, Adam and Eve were probably very happy when they had children. You can see that Eve is very happy that she gave birth to a child. But then this is how it turned out. So how do you think it was for Adam and Eve? Do you think they were happy or unhappy the way their children turned out? And so what causes parents a lot of pain is when their children don't get on, when their children are fighting. And what brings parents a lot of joy is when their children get along with each other and they play together. And when they grow up, they carry on having a good relationship with each other. And of course, this is something which we often celebrate is at Christmas, want all the family to get together and have a harmonious and joyful and happy Christmas lunch together. And that's a source of great joy for the parents when all the children come together and have an enjoyable time together. And it's always very, very painful if one child doesn't come along because they don't get on with other children, even though they've grown up and become adults. And so that then is a lot of pain. So to be happy parents, one needs to have happy children. And you can see there with Adam and Eve, obviously, it was a very difficult time they had with their children. You can imagine it wasn't just one day because God accepted Abel's offering, rejected Cain's offering, that Cain became upset and angry. You can imagine this is probably something been going on for many, many years, from when they were children, probably. You can see this in the story, of Princes William and Harry. It was some words which were exchanged and things that happened when they were very young children, which gradually grew and grew and grew, and gradually it became, I can't think of the word now. Anyway, where they are today. Very distant from each other. And it's very hard then to think how to go back again. So what does Jesus say there? Blessed are the peacemakers, for they should be called the children of God. And so what parents want more than anything else is for, hopefully, at least one of the children to become a peacemaker, to try to bring peace within the family. And sometimes when parents themselves are arguing, sometimes one of the children will try to think, okay, how can I help my parents to be peaceful and to get along with each other? And also often one of the children, will take some kind of initiative to think, okay, how can I help with the other children, my brothers and sisters, so they can get on with each other? And anyway, we feel very lucky that, our children still enjoy each other's company. They go on holiday together. And it's just a huge surprise for me that they wanted to do that. Because I thought I was a terrible parent. I thought my kids will never want to ever go on holiday with me ever again, but they do. And so that's very happy. So when you have that situation then, where children aren't getting on with each other and they don't go and visit parents, then you have to think, well, how can you be a parent if you don't have children to come along and visit you? So this is then the principle that talks about this, the restoration of children, parents, and the family. So Cain was the one to fulfill the indemnity condition. Anyway, it's just an awkward word, indemnity. It just means the one who does what's necessary to make things right again. So in German, they got a brilliant word for this, which is... Make good again. That's right, yeah, make good again. In other words, you do what is necessary to do to make things up, to make things good again. So Cain was the one who had to do what was necessary to make things good again and to overcome or remove his fallen nature, overcome his anger and resentment. Yet his accomplishment would have resulted in the entire family of Adam fulfilling the condition. So in that sense, the entire family of Adam would have been able to come back together again and be happy together again. Now, how is this possible? If Cain had yielded to Abel and fulfilled this indemnity condition to remove his fallen nature, which, as God said, you're feeling really angry, you're downcast and you're upset, but if you can overcome this, then you too can be blessed as well. Then both children would have been regarded as having fulfilled the indemnity condition together. So in other words, both of them had to do something. It's not just that Cain also had to overcome his fallen nature, but Abel also had to overcome his as well. Both of them needed to change. Both had to make compromises. Very often people are unwilling to compromise. They think, well, the other person should compromise and give in. But, it takes two to tango. Both sides need to say, okay, each of us have legitimate concerns. Each of us, have got problems, and each of us needs to apologize and to make up. It takes two to be able to do that. So they would have done that together. Through this, they would fulfill the indemnity condition and be restored as good children. So if they'd made up with each other and apologized to each other and become good brothers together, then they would have become good children. Thus, the foundation of the Messiah would have been established by the family as a whole. In short, had Cain and Abel succeeded in making the symbolic and substantial offerings, the indemnity condition for the restoration of parents would have been fulfilled. So in that sense, Adam and Eve then would have become parents. Again, it's not enough just to have children. Becoming a parent and that kind of relationship is a different thing. And so, so that was what was necessary. So how does one go about then being a peacemaker? It's not easy. So this is, when Jesus was alive 2,000 years ago, it wasn't a very easy place to be living because Israel at that time was occupied by the Roman authorities as part of the Roman Empire. The Romans were incredibly harsh and exploitative. And the reason why they expanded their empire so they could exploit the places which they'd taken over and send back goodies back to Rome to feed the mob. And so, so the Jews living in Israel at the time, they're very, very heavily taxed, and they weren't at all happy. And so whenever they tried to rebel, then they were put down with very viciously. Anyway, so how do you deal with this sort of reality of being occupied? So this is what Moses taught, I guess, it's from the book of Leviticus. Moses said, "Do not hate your brother in your heart." So if you're occupied by some foreign power, like the Romans, who are treating you really very badly, it's only natural to hate these people. I'm sure a lot of people, we had a huge empire not that very long ago. And as a result of that, a lot of people, hate the British because we weren't perfect, very far from it. And so it's very easy then to hate your brother in your heart. And so what Moses said, do not hate your brother in your heart. Reprove or reason with your neighbor frankly, so you'll not bear sin because of him. So what he's saying here is if you think, so hating a brother in your heart, it means, you've seen someone says something nasty to you, and then you feel hurt. And if you feel hurt, it's very easy to become resentful. And if you become resentful, it's very easy to start hating this person. But you may not even say anything or may not even do anything. You just go around feeling hatred for this person. Yeah? So who's bearing sin then? So if you go around hating somebody, does that person necessarily know it? No. So who's getting damaged? The hater. If you go around feeling resentment and hatred, the only person who's getting damaged is yourself. The only person who is committing a sin is yourself. So in that sense, you bear sin because of him. And so what Moses said here is reprove or reason with your neighbor. So, okay, so what does that mean? Oh, you said something that hurt. So instead of just bearing a grudge because of that, you say to the person, actually, that hurt what you said. And by doing that, then you are putting that back in your neighbor's or your friends or your brother's court. And the most decent people, if you say to them, actually, what you said hurt me, most decent people will say, oh, I didn't realize, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, please forgive me. And then things are made up. Yeah. So that's what it is. Reprove or reason with or explain to the person who's done something wrong, actually what you did, it was wrong, it hurt me. Yeah. And then, as I said, most decent people would just apologize. And then peace is restored in that relationship. So do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against anyone among your people, but love your neighbors yourself. I am the Lord. So that's, the phrase, love your neighbors yourself, which we all know from Jesus. Actually, this is where it comes from. And it's good to know the background. It's not just, just love your neighbor. Actually, there's more to it than that. If someone has done something wrong, you need to explain to this person that actually what they've done is wrong, and you need to try and make it up. And then you can be at peace with each other. So there's two ways in which this works. One is if someone hurts you, someone you believe has done you harm. In such a case, do not remain in a state of silent resentment. Do not give way to hate. Do not bear a grudge. And do not take revenge. Instead, correct him, reason with him, tell him what you believe he's done and how you feel it has harmed you. He may apologize and seek to make amends. Even if he does not, at least you've made your feelings known to him. That in itself is cathartic, and it'll help you to avoid nursing a grievance. And so this is what's very important then, that kind of open honesty. And of course, you have to be kind of careful when you say it, yeah? So the person can easily accept it and say, yes, I'm sorry. So it requires a lot of wisdom here, yeah, how you do this. So that's one aspect of it. But the other is also interesting. If you read it here, do not hate your brother in your heart. So another way you can hate somebody is not because they've done something wrong to you, but because they may have done something wrong to somebody else. And because they've done something wrong to somebody else, you may look down on them and you may think, oh, that person mistreated that person badly, and so I don't think well of that person. So if someone hurts someone else, so this commandment then from Moses, it also refers to someone you see acting wrongly, committing a sin or a crime. You may not be the victim. You may be just an observer. The command tells us not to be content with passing a negative judgment on his or her behavior, i.e., with hating him in your heart. And that's very easy. It's very easy to go around, criticizing other people for what we see them doing when they're not actually doing it to us. In that sense, we're hating that person in our heart. Instead, you must get involved. You should approach him, pointing out in as gentle and constructive a way as you can, and that's really important, doing it very gently and constructively, not in an accusing kind of way, but gently, constructively helping this person to come to a self-understanding and self-recognition of what it is that they've done wrong. And gently and as constructive as you can, what he is doing is against the law or just offensive, whether it's a civil or moral law. If you stay silent and do nothing, you become complicit in his guilt, i.e. bear sin because of him, because you saw him do wrong and you did nothing to protest. And so it's very much like the story of the parable of the Good Samaritan. There were some people who, when they saw this man lying in, having been mugged and lying in the gutter, they just walked by on the other side. They didn't commit a sin in the sense that they didn't actually go around and beat this person up and rob them themselves, but it was a sin of omission because they hadn't got involved. They hadn't helped, yeah? So it's this kind of sin. Again, if we see something which we think is wrong, you shouldn't just walk by on the other side. You shouldn't just close our eyes. You shouldn't say, well, it's nothing to do with me. But actually the commandment is we should get involved. But of course, the way in which you get involved has to be very constructive. As having a conversation with David a bit earlier today. And what was it he said? The wisest serpent, was it? No, not wise as serpent.
Wise as a serpent, but innocent as a lamb.
Yeah. So you have to be very, think, okay, this is what I want to do, but you have to think, well, I might be doing it with good motivation, but actually have to think, okay, what's a good way to go about it? So you shouldn't necessarily do things very impulsively. You have to think, okay, how can I get involved in a way which is going to make things better? It's very easy to get involved and make things worse, when there's a conflict between two people. And you have to think, okay, how can I get involved in a way which is going to make things better, in that sense, to become a peacemaker? And so peacemaking then is very complicated, really complicated, because it means understanding both sides, what's going on, engaging both sides in the conversation, trying to understand where each side is coming from, and then trying to think, okay, how can, I was involved in something a few years ago. The Methodist Church, a few years ago, decided to have a boycott against Israeli products or something. Anyway, so I was involved in the Council of Christians and Jews, and so there's a Methodist and a church and a synagogue just next to each other in Northwood, and so Jewish lady in CCJ, she wanted to engage them in a conversation about this. And so the Jewish, so there's some Jews and some Methodists, they're meeting, talking about this, and they got to an impasse. And so I knew the chair of CCJ very well, so we often used to talk. And she said, we got stuck. And she said, could you come along? And I said, well, I'm not Methodist, I'm not that Jewish, but I'll come along anyway because I'm a Moonie. Anyway, so I thought, okay, so I listened to both sides, and I thought, well, the only way to break this impasse is each side needs to be able to see themselves in a mirror, in a sense. And so the Methodists were saying, well, the fact that there was a Holocaust, however many years ago was then, that shouldn't affect the way in which we try and understand the Israeli-Palestinian problem. We don't need to take into account the experience that Jews had because of the Holocaust. And I said, well, okay. As an English person, I said, would you say that to the Irish? Forget about the Irish famine. That was in the 19th century. No, you wouldn't do that, would you? Nor would you say it to Scott. Oh, forget about, what was it? Culloden and all these things. Yeah, so how can you say this? And they, oh, yeah, you're right. And then there was, anyways, then but then, of course, there was, the complaint, well, why do Israeli soldiers treat the Palestinians so badly and so rudely when they're coming in and out of Israel for work? And so I asked the Jewish man, I said, my mother's born in Israel, I said to him, and she told me Israelis have got no manners. They're all rude. And he said, yeah, you're right. And then suddenly, oh, no, I know some people in Israel. Not. Anyway, so I realized the best way to do this was to insult both of them equally. But by holding a mirror up to them. So I wasn't on one side or the other. I was just there to try and see each other what the implications of what it is that they were saying. And then after that, things started to move forwards, which was good. And so it takes a lot of, one has to listen to both sides and understand, okay, for this particular person, what is a good way to help this person to come to some kind of self-realization of where they are and what they're saying and how it affects the other person. And so, one has to think a lot about these things, pray a lot about these things, study a lot about these things, and to become, in that sense, a peacemaker. And you can see from the testimony we had from David how amazingly he did that at Milton Keynes, and the sort of incredible work that Francois, who's got an engagement today, has been doing that in Watford as well. And so, that's incumbent upon us. And of course, Robin at the back there with UPF, Universal Peace Federation, has been doing this for a long time. But it requires us getting involved, yeah? And sometimes it makes sticking your neck out and hoping you don't get chopped off. But this is very important too. So blessed are the peacemakers, for they should be called children of God. And so we've all been invited, commissioned to be tribal messiahs. Tribal messiah is just a peacemaker within our own tribe. Partly it's in our own neighborhood where we live and the streets around us, but also it involves being a peacemaker within our own extended family. Yeah, there may be uncles, aunts, cousins, or whatnots who haven't spoken to each other for years, and trying to think, okay, how can we bring them together? How can we create a space where they can come together and where they can make up? And sometimes it means just, thinking, okay, let's have a tribal Christmas party where we invite all our, as many of our relatives as we can, come along and, in that kind of space where you can feel the presence of Jesus, all kinds of things can happen. People have the opportunity to be reconciled with each other. So that's what Father often used to do, just bringing people together, creating a certain atmosphere, and people were able to make friends with each other and to be able to, overcome these things. So these are different things that we can think about doing. So as we approach Christmas, think about how we can, involve and meet and get to see relatives that you might not have met or seen for a long, long time for all kinds of different reasons. And also, if they're neighbors that we haven't been getting on with for whatever reason, how to make up with our neighbors as well and take them some kind of nice little Christmas gift. Okay, so these are all things that Jesus was trying to do 2,000 years ago in an incredibly difficult situation, and unfortunately it didn't work out, and as a result of that, he was crucified. But still, from the spirit world, Jesus has been working to try and bring about peace and reconciliation. And so as we, watch and see what's going on in the world, especially situations within our own region between Russia and Ukraine, very difficult. When these things happen, the people to start ending up hating each other endlessly, endless hatred. And you can see that particularly in Israel and Palestine, this endless hatred. And how were things could easily have carried on happening in Europe, Western Europe, after what happened in the First World War, the Second World War, the millions of people that died, not just the military, but civilians, the tens of millions of people that became refugees and were resettled and displaced and lost everything. But there hasn't been a war in the main part of Europe since then. There's the European Union, as much as one agrees with it or doesn't agree with it, but there have been serious efforts to make sure that that didn't happen again and to bring about peace and reconciliation, particularly between France and Germany. So this is very important things that we ourselves, as God's children, have been invited and commissioned to do as trial messiahs or as national messiahs. Okay, so I wish you all a very happy week and the rest of today. Thank you. And just have a few moments now of reflection. Thank you.